Yeah. Right. Does anyone need a wee?
A drink?
A coffee?
Are we nearly there yet?
I know. Right. Yeah, it's a soonest thing.
Yeah. We're live.
Do I need to sit closer to this or here?
No, you should be fine. Should pick you up.
So welcome back to episode 2, and we are joined by Victoria from Pelham James.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So, you're also an estate agent. We had an estate agent on last week, but from a very different area. But let's start off with where you started.
Yeah, so I was living in Boston, and near Boston, and worked at an estate agents from 18, I think. Guess I can say names. Corporate agent, William H. Brown, in town centre. And that's where I started, kind of in a estate agency. Prior to that, I was in the travel industry with Going Places and Thomas Cook. So similar sales background, but selling holidays, not houses. And started at William H. Brown and worked there for about two and a half years, I think it was,
did they
as a
throw you in
negotiator.
at the deep end, or did they?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is like there. It's very different. I think now, obviously, I've worked for lots of different agencies, but with a corporate agent, I do think it's a little bit sink and swim.
Right. Okay.
You go on your basic 3-day training that's supposed to train you how to be an estate agent, but then I think a lot of it's just learn on the job. And I think that's kind of what I did. And I worked with some older agents that had been there longer, and then some people similar to my age at that point. And I did really love it.
Was there anyone that kind of mentored you through it? Did you ever think, that person kind of...
Yeah, I guess my boss there is still an estate agent in Boston, actually. So he owns Andrew Pears, if he's listening. Sharman Burgess. In Boston, and he was my boss, and I think he'd been with William H. Brown for years, 10, 20 years, and he actually was really good. So I wouldn't say he was my boss, but he's very hands-on. He wasn't a sit in the office person. He was always very hands-on, and I think it was always that kind of office where everyone got on, and some of my closest friends I met there, and I'm still really close with now. So it was a good agent to start with, and I think it's a good way to start learning because it's a big agent, it's busy. I think they must have been at that point number 1 or 2 or 3 in the top 3 of agents in town, so they always got a lot of listings.
Were they doing everything from the low end to the...
real mix. I think they had everything. So
lettings as well. And...
So they did have lettings, but I've never done lettings, and I've never had an interest in it. It's really different, I think. I think people assume letting agent to estate agent it's the same, but it's all paperwork, and there's so many rules and regulations with lettings, so it's never been anything I've ever been involved in, but they did do lettings, but not me.
So how did you go from the switch then from Boston and now obviously to Stanford then?
So 2000, so it worked at William H. Brown, and then had another office that I had with my ex-partner, and I worked there in between after I had Cooper, my son, and so we had Boston and another agent locally as well, and worked there. And then 2018, so they were the 2 agents I worked for locally. And then 2018, I had a bit of a change of life direction, you could say, and moved to Stanford. And actually at that point, I kind of creeped my way to Stanford. So I lived in Stanford, but I went and worked at an agent in Spalding.
How far is Stanford from here?
An hour. An hour. It's quite 35 miles, so depends how quick you drive, but an hour. And actually I moved to Stanford and thought I'll work at an agent in between, because if I don't like living in Stanford, I'll move back to Boston and I can still got a job that I can go back to. So I worked at a independent agent in Spalding. I think I worked there for about 6 months actually, and again it was probably very similar to the Boston agency, and worked there, and then eventually kind of got sick of the commute, knew that I was going to stay in Stanford. After 6 months I knew that's where I was going to stay, and then I left there and went and worked for another independent agent in Stanford, which again was my first really experience of working not Boston, not Spalding, that end. And
Stanford is like the higher end of...
Yeah, I'd say, do you know, there's still a real mix of properties there, but your kind of lower end properties are probably another 100,000 than here, I would say. So maybe a 3-bed semi's 170 here, I don't know, roughly now. That's probably what it would have been 6 years ago. And there probably, you'd get a 3-bed semi for 270.
Wow.
So, yeah, it is a bit of a
gap. Is that commute then? Because you're so close to London.
I think you're so close to London. You've got direct train to Birmingham. Yeah. You can go, obviously, via Peterborough on the train from Stamford, and that's 49 minutes to King's Cross from Peterborough. So, for a commuter, it's good. And
it's gorgeous though, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And I know it's really biased, but I think it was voted, and recently it was in the Times, second best place to live in England, voted by the Times. Yeah.
Do you think that Boston could have been like that, and do you think it's just kind of left?
I'm going to say no.
Do you know what? I think Boston has got so many good parts about it, and I think, you know, I always say, like, don't forget where you came from, and I loved Boston when I used to live here previously, and, you know, you got the Stump, you got loads of really nice buildings, but it probably just hasn't developed Boston, and it's got a different community now, and Stanford is just... It is that pretty picturesque town. Yeah. All the buildings are gorgeous. You know, it's a bit of a tourist spot as well. We get a lot of tourists there in the summer, and it's kind of got that hustle and bustle vibe. It's very boutique, very lots of independent shops. You know, you haven't really got the big brands there, really. It's all independent.
I feel like when you say you want to live in Stanford, you need £1 million
though.
though.
You're almost but that's obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I live there and I don't live in a house of £1 million. So I'll start there. But yes, I think there is that stance that Stamford's, you know, expensive, and you kind of get what you pay for. If you want to live in a nice area, it's more expensive. And I always think that for me personally, I could live back here and I could live in probably a 5-6 bedroom detached house what I live in Stamford. But you do pay for, and I think, do you want to live in Boston or do you want to live in Stamford? And it's exactly like that with anywhere.
This about Woodall last week.
It's exactly the same. You pay more to live there. And some people pay more because they want to live in a nicer area, or some people think, actually, I really want the bigger house, or I want the land and I can't afford it there. So it depends on what you're looking for, I guess. But yeah, I think the £1 million thing, you can get houses less for £1 million, but I think people think to get kind of your big family house, you are looking 800 plus probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
From a building point of view, there's a stone that obviously seems to be used a lot.
Stamford stone. Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Stamford stone.
Wow.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm assuming not all houses have to be built from it, but
No, I mean, Stamford stone gets used a lot by builders, developers, and there is a lot of houses that are built with that, and it's kind of got that prestigious, you know, is your house built from Stamford stone? Yeah. It's that. But, you know, we've sold loads of stone properties that are, you know, they've been there 200-300 years. They're not all that. So there is a lot of houses that are stone built, grade 2 listed, and a lot of properties are period homes. There is modern properties in Stamford, but for us, we specialise in older period or really contemporary kind of grand design-esque.
Before we get into kind of where you are now, just want to touch on something that obviously a female in the industry. Yeah. Has it been difficult or?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think so much now, but I think there's two sides of it. I think back in the day, it was a very male-dominated industry. When I was 18, I'm 36 now, so I do think that kind of last few years has changed. There was always female estate agents. It's not like you had to be male to be an estate agent. Yeah. I got a job as one, and there always has been. But I would still say, in general, it was more male-dominated. Yeah. But I think now it's evened out. But I think maybe differently as an employee, I think it can be harder to be an estate agent as a mum, because I think, you know, you need that flexibility. Yeah. And if you're working for the corporate agents, they don't give that. It's 8:30 till 6. Wow. That's what it is. But I think if you find an agent like I did, I was really lucky that the company that I work for were really open, because they believe in having the right person, and it's about what can you do in the time you're there. Not, you know, someone could be there for 9 hours and do nothing if it's not the right person. But if you're really good at what you do, you've got your work ethic, it's about that. So, but I think as of now, female, I don't think it makes a difference. I think there's as many female agents as there is males. I don't think now it's as different, but I think maybe 5-6 years ago it was still probably more male. And I'd still say I'd say it's 60-40, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it's close. I think there's a lot of female
agents.
agents.
Better with more females in that genre. So I just think it breaks down the male ego.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's the ego thing, but I also think sometimes people, if you're selling to a woman, they relate a bit easier. You know, if they're looking for a family home, you know, every woman's touch and all that. I don't know. But yeah, I'd say our office, other than David, who is part owner, is all women. Yeah.
Oh,
so
really?
all women, only David. Yeah, we're all women. So we could say we're the opposite.
How does David cope with that?
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
David's like,
pray for you, David.
he's outnumbered. I'd say at our office, it's more female, and I think sometimes people are surprised by that because we don't have a male salesman. David's valuer, and that's it.
It's funny because I'd say the only part of property development that hasn't kind of got there is building.
Yeah.
But would you say that's just more from a physical standpoint?
Maybe, but you see now more female bricklayers.
Really? Okay. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Women on site, which is interesting as well, and I think it's good for the industry.
Yeah. Terrible for the banter because...
You've got to be careful what you say.
A little bit. But I just think, maybe it won't get there quite as quick.
Yeah.
Just because of that, the physicality of it all.
Yeah.
Like site managers and things like that.
In charge.
And more like project managing.
Yes.
Yeah, the project management would be more of a...
Yeah.
Have you seen a thing with the age, though? So, everyone moans about kids.
Yeah.
When you get older.
Yeah.
Our kids are the youth of today. But has there been a change for you when you've seen...
As in agents coming into it who are younger?
Yeah, and their work ethic and things like that? Or
I think, do you know what? I think it's a real mix. I think if you can get the right agent involved from a young age, I think it's great because they've not come from another agent.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone, I myself, I'm sure I did as a younger age, you pick up bad habits from other agents.
Yeah.
So I think if you can get someone who's really eager to learn, really, you know, wanting to be the best at what they do and happy to be mentored, and you can show them the ropes, I think it's great to have someone young on board. It's, you know, life changes, doesn't they? People retire. You want to kind of have that routine of people you know, changing the industry. But I think predominantly maybe in our end, higher end, people want a bit of experience. If you're selling a large listing, maybe people want a bit more.
What would it look like for, say, an 18-year-old like yourself coming in now?
I think.
Where would you start?
Do you know what? I think starting at a corporate's not a bad idea because I do think you learn the ropes quite well. But for me, I think there's nothing like, you know, having that hands-on experience. But I think independent agents offer something different. They offer flexibility, as in, right, one day let's go out with the valuer, one day let's do this, one day let's do the marketing. Whereas in a corporate, I think you're in your box. You kind of, you're a negotiator, that's your role, you get your offers in, you hand it to the administrator, and that's that. Whereas I think in an independent agent, you get to kind of really mould your role and learn different skills. So I would always stick with independent because that's just, I've only ever worked for one corporate.
Do you think the corporate will end up dying out, or do you think it's you guys have to fight more? Yeah,
I think we personally don't go up against corporates massively.
Yeah.
But that's to do with our area. There's a lot of independent agents.
Like that?
Yeah, because in Stanford, everything's very independent. So most agents in Stanford, there's a few corporates. So you've got like Knights, you've got Sharman Quinney, they're corporate agents, but majority of them are all independents.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think in the kind of more mixed houses, you get, you know, your William H. Browns, or if you're in London, it's Fox and Sons. But where we are, I'd say it's mostly independent. There's a few corporate agents though, but I would say most of our competitors are independent.
You are obviously now at Pelham James.
I am.
Give them a plug.
Yeah.
Best
agent in Stamford, just
there
saying.
There we go. Family company.
Company, yeah.
Which is great.
Yes, it's husband and wife.
Yep.
Lottie and David set up the company just over 5 years ago. And yeah, they've done amazing. And that's not me just saying because I am there. Most people in our area know how well we've done, and a lot of it's from recommendation and from, you know, everyone knows everyone in Stanford, and I do think your recommendations and your reputation says a lot about you, especially potentially at the higher end market, because it's your biggest asset. You know, if you're selling a £1.5-2 million listing, people want to know they're dealing with someone they trust and who they and also get on with, because I always say that you know it's not just bricks and mortar, it's who you're going to have a relationship with through that process.
Yeah.
And who you trust, who you kind of feel like you're going to really be able to have them honest conversations with. So, they've done really well.
Did they both come from agents?
No, so they actually had a lettings firm previously.
Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
So very different.
Yeah.
They had a lettings firm and they did that for a long, long time. And I think, Lottie may correct me, I think the story was that they had a friend who had kind of a unique home, what you could say, that they would needed to sell, and it was on with a different agent and they didn't feel like they were getting anywhere. And Lottie is creative director and she's very creative with the marketing, and I think they asked them and said, would you try and sell it for us? And they did. So they kind of did their own brochure and did everything, even though that was not what they were doing. Wow, okay. And they sold it. And then I think they sold it and thought, do you know what? There's a real gap in the market for an agent that takes it to the next level. And the marketing is everything. And that's kind of what no other agents was doing in that area. So that's where Pelham James came from. And they closed the lettings business, got rid of that, and Pelham James was born. So
it's really interesting though, going from letting to
what a difference. Very different.
Wild.
Very different.
What levels are we talking, and do you guys sell? Because obviously you did just say before we started that it's not necessarily about price, it's about the house specifically.
Absolutely, so it's not, I think people do have that concept of, is it got to be £1 million? That's what people think. Does my house have to be £1 million to be a Pelham James home? No. And I think most agents that are at the higher end would say the same. It's not about the price. So you could have a chocolate box thatched cottage that is absolutely beautiful with beams and loads of like old features, and that would be our perfect home. And that could be 500,000. It doesn't have to be £1 million. It's about the home. Is it unique? Is it really aesthetically decorated, pleasing, or is it actually a renovation, but it's got huge potential and might be, might have outbuildings that could be amazing, might be in a really sought after Rutland village. So again, it doesn't have to be this finished property. Don't get me wrong, 80% probably are that beautiful finished home, but it doesn't have to be. So some of them are town properties in the town centre, that might be 700,000, a grade 2 listed townhouse, or you might have a chocolate box cottage in a really prime Rutland village that's 500,000.
But we're not going to see £100,000.
You're not going to see 100.
You're
not. Not with us. No. And no. I don't think you find a house in Stanford for 100,000 now.
If
no.
we'll have it.
I will too.
It'll be a letterbox probably.
Probably.
No, you're not find that. You might get a garage for 100,000.
Is there from a marketing point of view? You guys do amazing with your walk-round videos that you do. Do you think the high street type people in like Boston benefit from doing things like that, or do you think it's got its place?
I think, do you know what? I think anyone can do it, and it's not a Stanford thing, and we're not the only estate agent that do them. We are the only estate agent in our area that does them like us. So some people will do an introduction at the front, and then the rest of it won't be. Whereas ours is a real in-depth, like a mini viewing. That's what I would class it as. We're taking you on a tour of the property and pointing out. So we don't go, here's the loo. It's all about the finest features and kind of showcasing its best bits. I think there's a place for anyone to do that, but I do think if you're in a 3-bed semi, it's probably not going to have the same effect, because really it is just lounge kitchen. And if it's a 3-bed, and I live in a 3-bed modern property, but would it benefit from a property tour? Probably not. Probably pictures is enough for those kind of houses. But I think the reason why we've done that is because there's so much detail, and it can't all be captured on a photo, I don't believe. So I think a walk-round tour, especially if you're coming from out the area and you're wanting to book a viewing, to have seen it, they feel like they've already been there. So people go on a viewing and they'll say, oh, I remember this bit, because they feel like they've already done the viewing before they get there. So it really does help kind of bring to life what's there before they arrive. Pictures are amazing. They're definitely always going to be needed, but I do think
you can dissect, can't you?
Really
you almost like, if you've already been and seen the property, but then at night you can look at the video and
go back, pause
I
it.
remember seeing that.
Exactly. So I think they're really important, and it's again one of our massive things that we get so many compliments on, and so many people will say, oh my gosh, I've watched your video, or I've watched Lottie's video doing this, and I feel like I know that property now, and people watch out for them because we do sneak peeks, so we kind of release videos at certain times, and people will wait and say, I'm waiting for that video that's getting released at 8 PM tomorrow in Empingham. What is it?
And like a YouTube.
Yeah,
it's like it kind of builds the excitement as well.
Do you do it on purpose that way?
Yeah, okay. yeah. So it's all structured. So our campaign is really structured of how we release properties, and it's kind of our tried and tested model, and it's worked. So
does this go into the fee though? The overall
well, that's a good point. Fee actually.
Fee, So talking about fees, we're not the cheapest agent.
No.
But I think when you are selling a high-end property, and that there is agents in Stanford that will probably do very similar. I don't know what Boston charges now. I've not done it for here for 6 years, but I imagine it's about 1%.
Yeah.
We're not 1%.
No.
And the reason for that is because of what we put into it. And I just think also fees is a big thing for clients, but I also think if your agent is going to negotiate on their fee that quickly and say, do you know what, we'll do it 0.5% off, that's how they're negotiating on your sale as well. Point, and I do believe you get what you pay for with a fee, and I think it's 0.5% more or 0.75% more, and you get the experience. But the marketing, what we do, we don't charge up front for it, and that's what, if you go to London, a lot of these agents who do what we do, they might charge, don't quote me on this, 2.5, 3 grand up front. Yeah. We don't do that. So if we sell it, you don't pay anything for the marketing.
What do you mean? They would charge you 2 grand
for photography,
for the privilege
drone.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Wow.
Yeah. And so we don't do that. So yes, our fee's higher, but it includes everything. Right. We have a stylist, we have a videographer, we have a full video tour. Our brochures are bespoke done, so our brochures are like magazines, they're like books. Wow. We have a graphic designer who hand draws on the front of the brochure a picture of your property. We stay till 10 o'clock in the summer to do a twilight shot.
Yeah. Brilliant.
An agent that you're paying 1%, a corporate agent's probably not going to do it.
I love all of that. That's
proper,
that's the job I want.
That's it.
I want to do the brochures.
You want to do the brochures?
You're really love to do that. It and it's
and they're great, and we get so many compliments on them, and vendors go, when they look at them and they'll say, oh my god, I love it. Like I love my home.
Has anybody ever gone, a bit sad actually?
I don't want to move now. We do get that. Don't want to move now. It looks so great, especially when we've styled it and we're like, you have to move now.
It's a bit funny though, because we went to look at a barn that could be converted into a Grand Designs type place, and we went on the nicest day of the year so far, and we were like, we've got to get it.
This is it.
We've got to do it.
We've got to do it.
But then you have to remember, you're going to have to go there on a miserable day when it's raining, and it's not always the same.
No, I always say this. It's something I always say. If I show someone a property in, awful weather, raining, grey, I always say, if you can fall in love with a house now, it's great. Because actually people sometimes view a property in the spring, they move into it in winter and like, I don't like it now. If you love a house when it's absolutely pissing it down and it's grey and miserable, you've got all the best bits, the spring and summer to come. So I think, don't get me wrong, I do look at the weather sometimes like, it's not the best weather for my showing, but that is day to day, isn't it? So you're going to live in it all year round. Unfortunately, we're in England.
Are your clientele all, I want to say, like toffs?
I think,
to put it nicely.
I think, do you know what? Yeah, we've got some clients that are very wealthy, they've done very well for themselves, businessmen, very successful people, and that they're like that, and they've done well for themselves because they know what they're doing. And I would say at the higher end of the market, you're more on call. I work late a lot. It's not an agent where you can just switch off. It's not a 5 o'clock. If someone rings you and they're buying a house from Dubai, America, you work with their times.
That's right.
It is more demanding at the higher end of the market, but I think that's because you're selling their highest asset. You're selling a £2 million house. If they want to speak to you about it, you've got to be readily available. But I think that's probably what I quite like about it, because it's exciting. And you send an offer and someone's in America and someone's wherever and someone's in Dubai, and I think it's nice. Like it is. But don't get me wrong. I'm sure, like with every industry, everyone gets tough clients. Everyone gets clients that are a little bit more hard work, and you think, gosh, I'm glad that one went through.
I feel like there'll be more hard work though.
Maybe. Really do you know what? But it's kind of
because they know what they want.
They know what they want. And this isn't their first rodeo. This isn't their first house. With a first-time buyer, you're advising them on the process. a lot of people we use, this might be their 10th, 20th house they've bought. So, you know, they're clued up, they know what they're talking about. And, you know, sometimes that does make it harder to give a bit of advice on. But our clients in general, I would say they've employed us because we're the experts in our market. So if you really give them the honest advice, which is something we really pride ourselves on, like, it's all about being really transparent and honest. And I think we're not your typical estate agent like that. Whereas, you know, back corporate agents or in the lower end of the market, some agents do think maybe say what people want to hear. But actually it always bites you in the bum in the end, because then 6 months later they're saying, well, you said, but actually if you're just really honest and you give your advice and the client doesn't want to take it, you know you've said what you think. So I think most of our clients are really good at like saying, do you know what? I thought this, but we trust you. Let's go with what you say. And, you know, I think that's, again, it's just done on trust and whether they've bought into Pelham James. We always say, are you a Pelham James client? Because, you know, a lot of our clients are very similar. They, you know, it
cuts out the bullshit, doesn't it?
It does. It completely does. And we can just say to them, like, this is what we think. This is what we think we can achieve. You know, and we're on a percentage. It's in our benefit to get a higher price. Sometimes people have that illusion, I think, and that's of old estate agency. They're trying to get us to sell our house for cheap. And that's an old thing, I think, because we're in a percentage with every agent, whether you're selling a £300 house, 300,000 or a 2 million. It's in our benefit to sell it for the most. So I always say we see it as a partnership. You know, we see it as we work together. It's not a dictatorship. We work together to achieve what they want to achieve. We get the house sold. It's great. Everyone's happy. So
Do people make silly offers? And
do
they really? Even at that level?
I think
For instance, then.
Do you know what? We've had a real mix, and people do put in lower offers, and people say, especially if they're not from our area, they'll say, you know, the property market's not good at the moment, so we're going to be offering 800,000 on a £1 million property. That's just never going to happen. None of my clients who are on for $1 million are going to take 800. And they might say, well, you know, mortgage rates have gone up or what have you. And, you know, we're just really honest. Unfortunately, that's just not a figure my client would look at accepting. It needs to be a substantial increase. But people do. And, you know, if you've got a client that really needs to sell, again, it's all based on the client's want and need. If they are in a rush or they need to move for whatever reason, sometimes someone will get a bit of a deal, but most of our clients aren't in a desperate rush. I would say it's a want to sell, not a need.
Would you say you guys are in a bubble and probably not necessarily affected by the general housing market?
Absolutely. I would really stand by that, and I say that to people who are, you know, we get a lot of buyers from London because they might have come from a 2-bed flat and they can buy a 4-bed, 5-bed detached in Stanford, and you know, they might be buying a property for 2 million and they've come from a 2 million property, but in, you know, Kensington you're getting a 2-bed flat. And those clients are kind of in that London's property market dropping, or they might say, and I think again it's down to their niche, isn't it? But I do think Stamford and Rutland has been in their bubble, and I'm not saying it's forever in that, and we still are affected, but I think now, if anything, now we're in a normal market. We've had a market where vendors are on the front foot because there's not many houses to pick from, and everyone was overpaying for properties because they were like, there isn't anything else to pick from, but you got multiple bids on one property. I'd say now it's pretty even, but I do think Stamford and Rutland, it's a desirable place to live. People want to live there, and I think it has stayed in its own bubble relatively. I wouldn't say it's constantly ignores anything that goes in the market, because everyone's got money and everyone's checking their mortgages and cash and cash flow, but I do think Rutland and Stamford, compared to maybe areas further out, are less affected, but it's just because it's desirable, I think.
Do these people still get mortgages? So let's say obviously you've got houses on 5 to 7 million. Would you still get a mortgage, something like that?
I think it's a real mix. I think some clients are cash and free up the cash, but some people are sensible and say, do you know what, my money's best sat elsewhere, I'll get a mortgage. I'd say it's a mix. Majority cash, probably, I would say. Maybe, 60-70% probably cash, or cash from sale. When I say cash, it's not I've got the cash in the bank. They might have sold theirs for 2 million and they're buying at 1.5 million, so it's cash from sale. There's no mortgage involved still. So I'd say there's a lot of cash from sale. But we do still have clients that get mortgages because, you know, it might be working out better for them for their investments and keep their money elsewhere.
you say is a typical time frame to sell a house that's £7 million?
Well, 7 million, that one's the one you're referring to, is probably a niche one. But I think at the top end of the market is, what would I say? I think, 2.5, it's a real look of the draw, as in, if that right buyer is there, the week that house goes, it could sell in a week. But if it's all right buyer, right time, and I still always believe in that, I think if the right buyer's there, and it happens and they spot it and they're available, you could sell a house that's 3 million in a day.
Yeah.
But some houses take longer. Your 7 million ones, that was a little bit out of our area. And that one's not sold. We don't sell everything instantly, and there's only going to be certain clients that have got 7 million.
Well, yeah, it's a serious investment.
It's a serious investment, and people who want that kind of size of house. Not everyone wants to live in a house like that, and not everyone's got £7 million. And that might not go to a residential buyer. That might go to someone who wants that as a spa or a hotel or something like that. Okay, so it might not go to someone residential. It might go to more of a commercial. But I'd say
So let's say you got a house sold, it's like 1.5 million.
Yeah.
We've had issues along the way, like everybody does, with solicitors, with everybody else that goes along with it.
Yeah.
Do you have the same issues at that level?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is something in the industry that most agents will agree with. The England way of legal process is so dated.
Okay.
In Scotland, France, you exchange, you do it on a day, and you can't pull out.
In Scotland?
Yeah. Yeah, they're marketing in Guernsey, Jersey, they're different. Yeah. So Jersey, you actually go to court, and this is a bit off track, but you go into court and you swear by oath that you are purchasing that property.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's so different, but it means...
You won't be drunk doing that, would you?
I will buy this house. Yeah. But I think for me, and I think every agent, I don't think there's any agent that will say we wouldn't want to go down more of a planned route. Yeah, because the UK market, you could be going through a process for 3 months, and the day before, someone for no reason say, I'm not buying it now, or I've decided not to move now, or what have you, and that is rubbish. It's a real ball ache of the house market, because it's not great. But I would say solicitors, do you know what, if you've got a really good solicitor on your side, I stand by. We had a property recently, actually, they were moving from Scotland, so they were coming from Scotland, so their house had gone through, so they needed to know that this end was, but you can't do that this end because our system doesn't work like that. And I'd say some agents will tell you a legal process can take up to 12 weeks, up to 14 weeks, up to 16 weeks, depends what your chain is. We got that one through from day of offer, I think, again, quote on it, day of offer to day exchange in 3 weeks, 4 days.
Wow.
Yes, it can happen. If everyone's really on it, it can happen quickly. But solicitors, and they're busy, and, they might be taking on double files than they used to from COVID. They've not got as much staff now. Local solicitors is what I believe make the thing easier, especially in our market, because the conveyancing isn't your standard 3-bed semi Taylor Wimpey house. It could be multiple title plans. It could be, it's in trust with someone. It could be that it's listed and no one's got planning permission for something that happened 40 years ago. So having a local solicitors with knowledge of the local area really helps, but not everyone uses local solicitors. Some people will use an online solicitor, which for me, not for me. It's more of a transaction. You can't get hold of anyone, it's all on email. I think if you can get on the phone to people and hash out a problem, if there's a problem with a file, you can ring up and say, look, can we discuss it? Can we find out what the issue is? But in general, solicitors can play a part in it being delayed, but as can clients, as can buyers, as can vendors. It's all, if everyone's pushing in the right direction, it can happen quick.
We've got to suck it up, mate.
Yeah.
The problem is
solicitors are causing you issues.
We could get a great solicitor working for us, but then if we're buying from someone that's got a terrible solicitor, which we did have, what's the point?
Yeah, and then you're kind of pushing and they're not, or they're slow, or they're on holiday for 2 weeks. And
we had a piece of land that took 3 months.
Yeah.
It's just a piece of land.
Yeah. How can it be so difficult?
That's what we said.
They were in Dubai, weren't they?
They were indeed. They lived in Dubai.
Yeah.
So that's possibly the
reason.
But
and it can be so frustrating if you're on the other end of that as well, because you've got one person who's really keen to get it through or needs it to go through. That they're doing it for development, they're doing it for themselves, and it just doesn't happen always. And it's.
Would it be worth us investing in Stanford? If we had £500,000.
Yeah.
We're just starting out, bearing in mind.
Yeah.
So we're...
Do you know what? I think it's a really difficult one to answer. And the reason I say that is because Stanford's not a flip place. So in Boston or Boston villages, you might buy a house and you spend X amount on it, you chuck 50 grand at it and you flip it. Or you rent it and you get a HMO on it or what have you. Stanford's not really like that. No. So for Stanford, it's growth. So your property is going to grow because it's a desirable place to live. Rental market, again, everyone will have different issues on it, but I wouldn't say we tend to sell properties that are for rental.
Okay.
So not many people will rent a house that they bought from us, but most people might buy a house as a second home.
Okay.
They might buy a house so their children can go. So we've got 3 of the best private schools in our area. So Uppingham, Oakham and Stamford.
So posh.
Yeah. So. They've got board in there.
They just sound posh.
Sound posh.
Oh,
it sounds like it looks like Hogwarts. It takes over the whole of Uppingham. It's amazing. And people buy a second home, and they might buy that for an investment because they say, do you know what? If I spend XXX on boarding, I could put that money into a property, and we could live in Stamford so many days a week.
They're not politicians, are they?
No, they're not politicians. But it can work out that way. You invest your money in elsewhere, and in 5 years, that property probably is going to be worth more.
Yeah.
So it's a time frame thing.
It's a time frame thing. I think if you're looking for growth, Stamford's a good place to buy a property, but it's not a flipper. It's not something you're going to put on for 25 grand. Put a new kitchen in it and sell it for more. It's not really that kind of place, in my opinion.
But if let's say we buy a piece of land, then the cost of materials is the same there that it is here.
Yeah.
But
bet your builders are more expensive.
Yeah, but if
you did it,
Sam's obviously the builder. So, technically speaking, then we could make more money.
Yeah. Yeah, because your land cost is obviously a hell of a lot more out there.
What is the land like a typical?
Oh, do you know what? There's not much land available. That's the other thing. There's not a lot of land. If you need land, you need to be in the villages. It's very rare you're going to get a building plot in Stamford town. There isn't the space.
Do you sell for developers?
So we do have an odd pieces of land, but we've sold a property that we sold a piece of land to in Great Casterton. We sold it to some developers, and they've now built 4 executive homes on there.
Okay.
That's pretty close to Stamford, within 2 miles.
Okay.
Them properties vary from. There was 4, and we've not actually gone to market on many of them. So there was 4 from 780,000 to 900, and 3 of them have sold, and we didn't go into market.
Wow.
And if you look at that, someone has done really well there, I'm sure. They've bought the land, they've built 4 amazing homes, stone properties there, and it's a gated development, and it's done well. And we've got another one that we sold someone a piece of land a while ago, and they're now building, that's on Rightmove now, and that's a £2.5 million property in Ridlington, which is a village in Rutland, and that's the builder is building that. And he's actually quite local to here, actually. I think he's Woodall way. So there's money in it, because the end value's more. That's what you've got to look at. Your land's more, but your end value's more.
You're not going to get away with putting a 20 grand kitchen in a Stamford house.
I don't think so,
So probably some of the costs. I would imagine getting it up out of the ground probably.
Yeah, I suppose it's relative, like you say. You're going to have to put those finer
details, and if people want, maybe at your 700-800 mark, you could put a nice, bespoke kitchen in. But if you're looking for your 2 millions, they need to be, top. No Neff appliances.
There's 100 grand kitchen or something like that.
The thing is, though, it interests me because if it's not affected by worldly things, it means that we don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
Because there's enough worries as it is.
Yeah, without having to worry that end of it.
Is it going to sell?
Yeah. And there's a lot of the other things that we kind of deal with a little bit of is Class Q developments. So I don't know if you've ever
So we talk
had
barn.
Yeah, so barn conversions. So things that were agricultural buildings and have now got development to become a residential property, which is called Class Q. Yeah. And there's a company in Stanford that specialise in helping people get planning on Class Q developments.
Okay.
And we do a lot of those, and we've sold one about last summer, I think, and we've got another one coming up in a Brooklyn village as well, and they do really well for developers, and so developers do look at them.
That is interesting.
The last one sold to someone who wanted it for their family home, but the next one may well go to someone that does it as an investment, because again, the end value of them, they're very grand design.
Yes.
They've got to look like that, so they're really contemporary, ultra modern, clean lines, lots of glass balconies, and they can be really special. So that kind of development.
We looked at one, but it was in the Boston area.
Yeah.
And you just know that you're going to spend the money, but you're not going to be able to command that money at the end.
Absolutely, because like you say, the materials on those kind of properties aren't your standard brick. Some of them you've got to have that, you've got to stick to a certain material because that's part of the planning. So that can be more pricey. So you've got to make sure it stacks up at the end. And like you say, maybe in this area it probably doesn't stack up for a development.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it for your family home for the next 10 years.
I just don't think you'll get the money out of it.
Not locally.
No. Just come and buy in Stanford.
I know.
We just need Sam to move. Because he keeps trying to get us to go further north.
But then to be fair, there is money to be made there as well.
Yeah.
Well, I was in Woodall.
Yeah, to be fair, that is the...
It's such a nice area though, isn't it? Woodall, Horncastle.
So Neil and I really want to commute from Stamford straight into London.
Perfect.
So that's our goal. We're actually trying to get further away from you, Sam.
Just push it along the line a little bit.
This has only sold it to me that I need to live in Stamford eventually.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, that's my job. If I've sold it to you on this,
I haven't even seen a house.
Yeah, you haven't seen a house, you move it.
These are all the good bits.
Yeah.
There's got to be... What's the bad bits about it?
What's the bad bits?
Not about the company, because obviously the company's great that you work for.
Yeah, they're a great company, and I'd say every market comes with a challenge. I'd say at the higher end market, it's really price sensitive. That's what I would say. I'd say it's about managing people's expectations. So that's something we're really key on, and I think that can be tricky because buyers have an idea that we wouldn't pay that for it because it's not worth that, and homeowners have the opinion they've put their heart and soul in that home and they might live there for 10 years and they've invested a lot of money in it. So there is always a little bit of a gap between what a buyer thinks at the top end and what a homeowner thinks. So that is something that I would say managing expectations and being key on price to start with. I think if you can get real good honest advice and good comparables to show why what you're saying is accurate, then you stand yourself in good stead. But not all agents go down that route. Sometimes it's highest valuation wins and they value it the highest and they get it, but we get a lot of properties that we get second time round, so they've gone on with the agent that's told them the highest and they're probably the cheaper fee. It hasn't sold, and then we get it second time and we get the right price, and we also we command that fee then because we can show our expertise and our marketing is so different. So
above all, because I think this is an interesting conversation,
and weather, that's the other thing that is really dictating at the moment. Weather for our shoots. Weather in England is causing us havoc at the minute because all the shoots have to be rescheduled. And we're looking at the weather and we're like, we've booked one in, and then we look again and it's like torrential rain. That's a challenge. I would say booking photo shoots in can be really hard because we don't book one person. We book a photographer, a stylist. We have Lottie does the video tour. We've got the client, out the property, and they've prepped the property ready. Weather, that's my other difficulty in our market.
Going around spraying like nice smells around the house?
No, not for shoot. I do like candles though on viewings. Always love lighting a candle in. I think it is about the atmosphere, and I always say people bake your bread in the morning, but on shoots we have a stylist and it's lifestyle shooting. So they might set the table with blueberries and croissants and red wine and chopped bread and
I love it.
It works.
What were you going to say?
So above all, would you say you are a saleswoman above everything?
Yes.
Your ground?
I would say yes, me as a person, sales is what I love, and I think the excitement of selling is how I am. I think I will always be in sales. I do believe that, because I think if you love what you do, even on the challenging days, everyone has a hard day at work, But, you know, when you get that offer accepted or completions, we get a lot of clients who send us gifts and send us gorgeous cards and saying thanks for being on the journey. It makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not in sales, you don't get that, because you don't get that kind of that feeling at the end that you did it and you completed it. But I'd say, yes, I'm a salesperson, but I'd say we're very personal at sales. I think that's the difference. It's not a one in, one out numbers game for us. So I think that's what I really enjoy about where I am now. I don't think I could go back to selling 30,000-40,000 in a month where it's all just 200,000 quick. There's no personal service with us. It's really in depth, and I think I am a salesperson, but I think it's about people, and I feel like I've got to know loads of clients, and I've learnt loads about houses that I didn't know about before, and I think the experience that comes with that is about the homes, but it's like the process of getting them to market. Our marketing process is so in depth.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're estate agents, and there's no getting away from that. But I'd say if I was to rule it in one, I'd say we're a marketing company that sell houses, because our marketing is bespoke, and that's what sets us aside from the rest, I believe.
It's crazy because it never used to be like that, did it?
No.
Marketing was never a thing.
No, I used to print the brochures from the printer at the side of my desk at William H. Brown, get a stapler, staple it together, and that's your particulars.
Yeah.
You know,
movie set at that place.
Yeah, it was. That's just what it was like, and that was fine. And there's still agents that probably do that, and it works for some agents because it's a different end of the market. But for us, gone of the day, I couldn't take a £2.5 million listing and print out an A4 printer.
There you go.
There's your details.
Yeah.
I think the market's moved on, and I think people expect more.
Yeah.
And I think it's become, you know, you see the programmes, don't you? People watch it. They watch the property programmes. They're watching Selling Sunset. They're watching, you know, Grand Design, and people kind of are looking for that kind of premium service now, and I think it demands it at that price point, 100%. I think you can't be doing the standard stuff anymore. Yeah.
Do you take can people come and view houses like you would normally, or do you have to check bank balances and things like that?
So we don't always ask for proof of funds. That's not kind of a must have.
Okay.
But we do vet people quite highly. So, you know, at that price point, people don't want their neighbours just coming round for a nose.
This is right, exactly.
So I think a lot of our clients are people we know of, or we've dealt with, or we've kind of sold them a property in the past, or they've been viewing with us for 6 months or what have you. So I'd say there's no checking your balance really until at offer stage, but yeah, you've got to have the money there.
Yeah.
But of course people, you know, could say, I've got the money, and then they haven't.
Not, yeah.
But majority, I don't think people want to waste their time nowadays anymore.
Think you're right.
I don't think 9 times out of 10, who wants to waste 2 hours looking around a house? Because it can be 2 hours.
Wow.
I don't think people probably, you might get the odd people, but I think
most.
most.
Around one of them houses.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's quite annoying really, because I actually want to go look.
You want to come and have a look at one with
You know us now, so.
I know now.
I can assure
Blacklisted.
you, he does not have proof of
2 million.
I've seen to that one.
Oh dear.
Taking all your money for something else.
I might call you up though.
Yeah. I recognise your voice. Are you sure you've got 2 million? Yeah. So yeah.
It would be interesting though for us. I'm not saying come up around somebody else's house, but if you get a house that's been built,
like a new build,
new build, just for
standard they're at.
For our point of view to learn.
It is good. I think it's good to see, you know, what people are doing in different areas, because I think that's what kind of makes you design something a little bit different, or you know, you pick something different or what have you. So yeah, we do get a few new builds that we end up doing that are bespoke, or you could watch a video tour. It makes you feel like you're there anyway.
That's true.
Or you really want to see it in real life.
True, yeah.
But yeah, I think it's good to see properties in different areas from scratch, for sure. Like it just offers something different, especially in different agent.
Can you see, what do you think the future looks like for selling houses? Do you think anything's going to change, or do you think?
I think the market's levelled now to a point, again, where it's a normal, if there was ever a normal market, I think that's where we're at now. I don't think there was a lot of doom and gloom at kind of the end of the year. Mortgage rates went up. Everyone was a little bit nervous. People were kind of non-committal. They were viewing but not necessarily offering as quick. I think now a bit of confidence has come to the market. But again, I think people will always need to move house. Whether, you know, you've been relocated for work, whether you're going to get your kid into a school, people will always need to move. And I think we are very lucky in our area that most people have got the finance in place.
Yeah.
But I think in general in the market, I do think the market's really buoyant still. We still have got a lot of buyers looking and offering, and so I think the market is definitely picking up. Mortgage rates are coming down. I think it was only a couple of days ago that, not that this is relevant to my market, but it's a knock-on effect. 95% mortgages have just come back in for first-time buyers, and that's not been about for a while. Wow. So I think that brings on to the next buyer. Everyone's stepping up, aren't they?
Yeah.
Someone buys a first time, that person then takes their next one to a 300, the 300,000 goes to the 500,000, and it all works. It's a domino effect.
Yeah.
So I think the advice to us would be?
Oh, tricky one to put him on the spot. Yeah. What's the advice? I think, for me, I do really believe in area, and that's not me saying you have to buy in Stamford, but I think in everywhere there's a nicer part, there's a not nice part. If you're going to buy a property, and I always say this, you can change what you want inside, you can't change where it is.
Yeah.
So for me, I always say buy in a good area, because internally you can make the right changes. But if you have bought really close to a new build estate that's maybe not going to be as desirable in X amount of years, your property's probably not going to be worth that. So I think invest in location. So there's always, in any area, there is more desirable villages than not.
Absolutely.
And I'd still say that's relevant to Boston. I know, Curtin, Gosberton, Sutterton, Fishtoft, Freeston. They always used to be Freeston, Fishtoft. They always be really desirable areas when I was here.
Yeah.
And I think buy in an area that's desirable, and there's going to be certain properties that aren't. So I think area is really key. And I think you guys know what you're doing, but I think it's about being sensible, isn't it, and working out the figures. And I think as developers, we do see developers that buy properties and then a year later try and sell it, and it kind of, they've overspent on it. So I think know what you're spending. In Stanford you probably can do that to a certain extent, but if you overspend on a house just because you put a 50 grand kitchen, it doesn't mean it adds 50 grand to the end of the property. No. So I think just being sensible with the choices, but and there's always a fine line, isn't there, but buying it and wanting it to look good for investment, but not putting your own personal choice on it too much, because I did that. I built a new build house when I lived here in Spilsby and put the stuff in it because I wanted to have it. But actually, if I was doing that just as a flip, probably wouldn't have put that kitchen in, because I've overspent on that kitchen probably, and then ended up selling it, and we did well out of it. But I would say, kind of not over-speccing, but also not under-speccing. I think under-speccing's got a lot to say for itself.
Yeah.
You buy a nice house and the kitchen's not great, everyone can see. Everyone looks at things like that. But over-speccing can equally have the wrong thing, because you've overspent then.
Yeah.
So
we thought about kind of giving the look of expensive without having to spend that ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, exactly. It's about that middle ground, isn't it? Getting a good quality, but not.
It's quite difficult though, because it's just finding the right area that it
exactly
meet that demand for it.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wonder, is it worth having to travel that distance to build a house in order to command that? Instead of just sticking to your area, thinking.
And even as close to, you don't have to be in Stamford, can you? You could do the close villages and around, and you do get more for your money around there.
Yeah.
And you come out of a little bit of Rutland, but do a Stamford village 5 miles away.
Yeah.
There's Peterborough villages, which I wouldn't class Peterborough because we don't cover all of Peterborough, but we do desirable areas of it. There's villages such as Wansford, for instance.
Yeah.
That's a village that's classed as a Peterborough village, but it's so pretty and it's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And properties there, I would say sell for not dissimilar to Stamford if it's done right. Okay. And I say as close to a desirable town as you can get.
This year as a whole is going to start getting better. I think people are tending to move out of cities.
Yeah, definitely.
Which you're probably finding as well. London people, like you said earlier, are moving out to the area.
Yeah.
It's quieter. You get more for your money.
100%. They want that country living.
Yeah. But I would say in 10 years' time, maybe 20 years' time, the house prices will start rocketing up again.
Yeah, and I think people do, don't they? They come from city life, they've done that for 10, 15 years, they maybe want to start a family and don't see themselves wanting to do that in the city with no garden, no no lovely dog walks and everything like that. That's what people vision, don't they? They vision that family life sometimes of retreating to the country or retiring in the country, and I think there's a lot of that in our industry. Definitely, a lot of people come from London and they want the tennis court, they want the 5 acres, they want all that.
It's like Elkington. That was
a lovely place. Yeah.
Literally, I wonder if the bubble will come further this way
to that area.
Yeah. I think like you say, the market does change, and who knows? Anyone who says they know exactly what's going to happen in the market, I think are lying.
Yeah.
No one knows what's going to happen, but I think you can take it on how it is now, how it's been in the last year. Is there a lot of buyers around?
Yeah.
And I think properties will always sell because people will always need to move for some reason.
Yeah,
definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Interesting.
We learnt a lot, and we'll be buying a bit.
And we can't afford it.
Can't afford it.
No. I just feel frustrated. But
I'll contact you in a few years, see if I can get you some land.
Cool.
Let's get Sam a fuel card.
Yeah!
Start travelling.
Add some miles up.
Either that or you're going to have to teach me how to build houses.
Yeah, that's it. Female in the industry, Victoria.
Well,
First
I
one.
don't know. I said Neil to build houses. I'll market them. Yeah?
You market them.
I'll help.
I've been trying, but he just won't come. You've got his card.
I did actually know my first
brick.
Yeah.
Steel tap boots.
Yeah.
High vis. You're ready to go.
I don't know really that I would be getting the job.
I don't have to deal with all that.
No. Oh, Sam does not want me on
site. Causing chaos.
Yeah.
One day.
One of us would be buried in some foundations within a short
Here's the gravestone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
That's alright. Thanks for having me.